Today we have our guest speaker, Dr. Ulhas Chandelkar ji. He is an assistant professor in Department of Pharmacology at Goa Medical College. He is a recipient of Medical Excellence Award. He is also a recipient of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Education Excellence Award by International Business Council. And today he is going to talk on the topic Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and Buddhism and mindfulness. So I will ask Dr. Ulhas to introduce himself again, and he can share his screen. Yeah, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya. Myself, Dr. Ullas K. Chandelkar, hails from small village in Pernem in North Goa. Presently, I'm working as assistant professor at Goa Medical College since last 19 years. I have completed my MBBS in 1999, then MD in subject of pharmacology in 2007. Uh, I have been honored as the first Buddhist doctor of Goa by many social organizations in Goa. Presently, I am working for genesis of first Goa Buddha Vihar and Sambodhi Sanskar Kendra, which is a training center and the International Center for Buddhism in Goa. I am also a member of admission committee, professional degree courses, Government of Goa, and basic medical scientist at Avishkar Ethics Committee. So greetings from Goa to everyone. Once again, Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim, Vandami Banteji. At the outset, on behalf of Goa, I extend our gratitude to Ambedkar Association of North America, Ayushman Jagdish Bankar sir, Ayushman Sanjay Bhagat sir, Ayushamati Vinay Thamke madam, even today's host, Dr. Shailesh sir, for giving me this opportunity to share my thought at the international platform. I definitely feel this is just a beginning and our dialogue and Dhamma work will go long way rather forever. As everyone knows, in today's world, everyone has problems. As a medical professional, when we see our clinic, every third person or rather patient seeking medical attention suffer from stress or depression. Most people are not happy in their life. What could be the reason? The Buddha says life is inseparably tied to something called dukkha, unsatisfactoriness running through our lives. If we want to stop suffering, we have to stop it where it begins. Thus, the Buddha says it, the truth of the origin of dukkha. And Bhanteji has already spoken about four noble truths, Char Arya Satya. That is, there is a suffering in life, there is a cause for suffering, there is an end to suffering, and there are the various ways to end for suffering. That is the Arya Satya, that is noble eightfold path. To free ourselves from suffering fully, we have to eliminate ignorance. To eliminate ignorance, we need wisdom. Wisdom cannot be gathered by mere learning, by gathering and accumulating the facts. However, Buddha says the wisdom can be always cultivated. The essence of teaching of Buddhas can be summed up in three principles. The Four Noble Truths we have already seen, five precepts that have already been given, and the most important, the Noble Eightfold Path. The first one, the right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and last but not the least, right concentration. Now, when you talk about Noble Eightfold Path, the eight factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are not steps to be followed in sequence, one after other. They can be more aptly described as components rather than steps. Comparable to the intervening strands of a single rope or a cable that requires the contribution of all these strands for maximum strength. So when we see a rope, the each fiber to the of that rope. So that's why it is important that we follow all 8 paths together. To understand the Eightfold Path, this can be divided into 3 groups. The first, moral discipline group, made up of right speech, right action, right livelihood. The second one, the concentration group, made up of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And third, the wisdom group, right view and right intentions. The final goal of the Noble Eightfold Path is liberation from suffering, which ultimately will lead to happy and successful life. And that is a key of living successful and happy life. The coming to the first one, the right view. Right view, seeing the things as they really are. Right view is the guide for all the other factors. This enables us to understand our starting point and our destinations. So to give an example, so whenever we see something blurred, we go to optician and we get our eye checked and we get a spectacles. So whenever we see something unclear or not clear, so we change, actually we get actually our spectacles so that we can see the clearly. And similarly, the factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. So we see the things as they really are. Coming to the next one, right intentions. Intentions are also called as thought. When intentions are right, the actions will be right. When a person holds right view, his deeds, words, plans, and purposes will be right. So person will definitely live happy and successful life when we see the good things, when we think good, the automatically the deed, our plans and our purposes will be in the right direction. Intentions of goodwill opposes the intention of ill will. So whenever we think good, all the negativity will slowly go out of our mind. So remedy the Buddha recommends to counteract ill will is to have metta. Metta is nothing but a loving kindness. Metta, it is a universal state of selfless love extended to all living beings without discrimination or reservations. Coming to third one, right speech. As Bhantiji has rightly mentioned about Ashadi Purnima. The Buddha divides the right speech into 4 components: abstaining from false speech, abstaining from slanderous speech, abstaining from harsh speech, and abstaining from idler's chatter. Very important to know here, the speech can break lives, it can create enemies, and it can start wars. Or if the speech is good, it can give wisdom, it can heal divisions, and it can create a peace. So it is important whether we are using our speech in a negative way or we are using our speech in a positive way for the productive work. Now coming to a story. One day the Buddha came to Rahul, pointed to a bowl with a little bit of water in it and asked, Rahul, do you see this bit of water left in the bowl? Then the Buddha threw the water away and said, do you see, Rahul, how that water has been discarded? In the same way, one who tells a deliberate lie discards whatever spiritual achievement he has made. It is very important to know. The one who tells a deliberate lie discards whatever spiritual achievement he has made. Buddha again asked, do you see how this bowl is empty? In the same way, one who has no shame in speaking lies is empty of spiritual achievement. Then the Buddha turned the bowl upside down and said, do you see, Rahul, how this bowl has turned upside down? In the same way, one who deliberate lies turns his spiritual achievement upside and down, becomes incapable of progress. So if we don't use our speech properly, we can entirely lose what we have achieved. So speaking the truth, speaking the correct thing, and having the good intentions, good view is most important to live and enjoy happy life. Therefore, one should not speak a deliberate lie, even in jest, even in jokingly, even when we are within our friends, among our friends. We should not lie, even in the jest or jokingly. Coming to fourth action, Buddha mentions three components of right action: abstaining from taking life, that is intentional killing, abstaining from taking what is not given, that is the thievish intent, abstaining from sexual misconduct, that is to protect marital relations from outside disruptions. Coming to fifth one, right livelihood. Wealth should be acquired by legal means peacefully without violence in a righteous way. So Buddha mentions five specific kind of livelihood which brings harm to others and therefore to be avoided. That is dealing in weapons, dealing in living beings, dealing in meat productions and butchery, poisons and intoxicants. So the people who follow Buddhism, people or Ambedkarite people should not engage themselves in these five businesses or these five works. The Abhidhamma equates Sila with the right speech. Sila is the moral discipline. So Abhidhamma equates Sila with the right speech, right action, and right livelihood, which aids to mental purification. The observance of Sila leads to several levels. Social, the principles of Sila helps to establish harmonious interpersonal relations. Psychological, Sila brings harmony to mind, protection from inner split caused by guilt. Karmic, Sila ensures harmony with cosmic law and we get favorable results. And contemplative helps to establish preliminary purification of mind. The next one, the right effort. So this is very important as far as our actions is concerned in our daily life. The right effort provide the energy demanded by task. So if our intentions are good, our actions will be good, and if we put our efforts good, the outcome will be good. So as a student, they should study regularly without wasting time in unproductive and non-academic activities. For parents, there should be a proper parenting, no comparing with other kids, and friendly relationship towards the children. Because the one friend only can tell their problem to another friend. If the environment in the house is hostile, I think the children will not tell their problem to the parents. So having relationship, a friendly relationship, cordial relationship with the children is most important to diagnose the problem and to give a proper solution. For employees, they fulfill their duty diligently, not idling away time. For businessmen, articles to be sold should be presented truthfully. There should be no misinterpretations of quality or quantity. The coming to right mindfulness. Mindfulness is a presence of mind, alertness, or awareness. Here, the mind is trained to remain in present, open, quiet, and in alert state. So all the time when we have a full mindfulness, every time whenever we are eating, we will be alert. Whenever we are driving, we will be alert. When we are sleeping, we will be alert. When we are attending lectures, we will be alert. When we are going somewhere, we will be alert. When we are within our family, when we are outside, indoor, outdoor, everywhere in each and every moment, we will be alert if we attend full right mindfulness. And that is what most important requirement of life. The whole process is a way of coming back into the present. Suppose we are concentrating on one thing and we get a distraction. If our mindfulness is right, we can come back to a object or a work that we are actually doing just 1 minute before. So having right mindfulness is very important to get success and live happy life. So mindfulness facilitates the achievement of both serenity and insight. Coming to right concentration, concentration ensures that every act of mind remains centered on the object, that is one pointedness. So we think one thing at a time. So as I already said, when we are eating, we are only eating. When we are talking on the phone, we are only talking. When we are driving, we are only driving. When we are attending some lectures, we are only attending the lectures. When we are talking to a friend, we are talking only to a friend. When we are doing some work, we are 100% involved in that work. And we do involve ourselves 100%, the output will be definitely will get 100%. The Buddha says, the mind untrained in concentration moves in a scattered manner like a fish which is taken from the water and thrown onto dry land. You can see whenever the fish actually brought outside the water and kept on the ground, you can see how the fish will actually start dancing, or rather actually he actually gets difficulty in taking that oxygen. So attainment of concentration makes the mind still and steady. So concentrating on thing what we are doing is most important. And if we get 100% concentration, right concentration, we can attend or we can do the things 100% correctly. Untrained mind cannot stay fixed, but rushes from idea to idea, from thought to thought without inner control, how we see fish when it's brought from the water onto the ground. Same way, the untrained mind start actually rushing from one place to another. What are the practical aspects of Noble Eightfold Path? We see individuals have enough knowledge, that is the information. But is information that people have may be incorrect or irrational. It is the wisdom that helps every individual to analyze the information which is correct and rational. So if we have a wisdom, we can see whatever the information we are getting, or whatever the information we are gathering, whether it is correct or not. So when we follow the 5 precepts and Noble Eightfold Path in our daily life, we start developing this analytical power of ignoring the wrong and cultivating the good. And we start developing the wisdom. And development of wisdom, we need contribution of all 8 factors that I've shown in the rope or a cable. So each and every fiber of that cable is required or is important to make that entire cable strong. So following the 8th path is most important to change our life, to transform our life, which will lead to a happy and successful life. Now, what are the role of Dhamma in development of human being? When you talk about why Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has given us the Dhamma, why not any other religion? So the role of Dhamma in development of human being. Generally, it is said that human being needs food, clothing, and shelter. But I feel there is no guarantee that a person will achieve satisfactory progress only with these 3 things. To progress in life successfully, the most importantly, every human being needs education. And education is the most important because food, clothing, and shelter does not guarantee the education, but the education, on the contrary, definitely ensure that every person having the good, best, and high education can get all these 3. The person who is educated can get food, clothing, and shelter. But the person having food, clothing, shelter does not ensure or does not give guarantee that person will get education. So this is very important. So I feel besides food, clothing, and shelter, education is the most important thing in our life. To get education, this is a very important point. To get education, they should be free from all hindrances, that is obstacle, false belief, misconceptions, discriminations, freedom of mind, and freedom of expression. So person should be able to express his thought freely. Person should have free from his mind. So there should not be any false belief. There should not be any discrimination. So Dhamma, that is teaching of the Buddha, helps to overcome all these obstacles. When I analyze the educational level and social status of scheduled caste communities in India, I feel those who have adopted path directed by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in 1956, that is Dhamma, people have achieved tremendous development in all the fronts and are working at very highest level in administration, both in India and abroad. But the people who have not completely adopted the directions of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, they are still in the developing stage. This proves that the Buddha's teaching, that is the Dhamma, has important role in overall development of scheduled caste and other communities in India. So that's how actually I make a mark here. So why Babasaheb actually Ambedkar has given us Dhamma? Because we should get free from all the hindrances, we should get free from all the obstacles. That's why Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has given us this Dhamma. My observation for the many years in India and Goa in particular, that the way today's young generation trying to get involved in non-Dhamma activities, the net result of this will be definitely slavery. It is the need of the hour to intervene and get the youngster back on the track. So we need to inculcate our indigenous culture, that is the culture of progress, in a rational way. We need to convert our VRRs into culture developing centers, that is Sanskar Kendra. I would like to make a mention here. If we see the youngster today, everybody with the mobile, we see 24 out of 24 hours, actually very difficult to say how many hours actually they might be putting, how many hours they might be sleeping. But the most important, the thing that I have actually realized, now the today's world, the youngsters are getting free mobile data, free data. Now they are unemployed, but because they are getting free data, they are engaged on the mobile and they are not actually realized that they are actually unemployed. Parents somehow actually try to actually offer them 2 times food, but because they are getting the free mobile data, they are not realized. And this is actually a modern actually technique of taking our generation to slavery. So we need to intervene. We need to make them realize that what they are doing, what they are wasting, how much time they are wasting, that will definitely will lead them to slavery. So it is need of the hour. We need to intervene at right time and bring back our youngsters back on the track. What is the future of Dhamma in the world? When we talk about actually Dhamma, the people need peace, non-violent environment to live in with. People need fresh air to breathe. People want to live stress-free life. One can enjoy all this by following Dhamma teachings of the Buddha. I think everyone should agree, because if everyone follows Buddha's teaching, it will definitely guide in protection of not only human beings, but each and every living creatures on this earth. So if we follow Buddha's teaching, it will definitely guide in protection of not only human beings, but each and every creatures on this earth. Now, what are the impact of Corona pandemic and Buddhism? Everybody must have seen the lot of our Bhantes actually was going actually on the roads when there was a peak pandemic, and they were actually distributing masks. They were distributing when even the doctors actually was scared, or Bhantes actually was going. They were actually distributing masks. They were distributing eatables, food, so and so. So COVID-19 pandemic has led to loss of human beings worldwide and taught us law of impermanence and its nature. As already Buddha said, any creature that takes birth on this earth has to go one day, has to actually leave this earth. And that has been proved once again actually during COVID pandemic. And this has been already, as already said, the law of impermanence and its nature, how the nature actually will behave, which has been already propagated by the Tathagat Buddha 2,500 years back, and now actually it is getting reapproval, or it is getting reproved. Now coming to Goa. Now, as already know, the Goa is famous for churches, temples, and sea beaches. All over the world, I think Goa might be known as Greenland. Now, Goa is a small state of India with hidden Buddhist history. Now, when we talk about Buddhism, the Buddhism in Goa, the activities were seen since 200 BC, that is before Christ. You can see there are so many caves, there are Aroram caves, Lamgao caves, the caves at various places. Then here, the caves at Rivona. This is the Bhumisparsha, Bhumisparsha, that is a Buddha's idol touching the earth. Then here you can see this is Dambavli that was actually built by Bhante Punna. That was Bhante Punna was sent by Tathagat during his time. Then you can see this is the Tambudisula temple. By looking at it, you can see that it is a Buddha Vihara. Then the most important point I would like to mention here, the Goan historian Verde Valavalikar has tried to establish that Punna, the famous disciple of Buddha, was resident of Goa, and the Lord Buddha himself had visited Goa 3 times. And you can see this is a idol found at North Goa, and presently this is actually they have kept in the St. Xavier Museum at Mumbai. Now, as far as revival of Buddhism is concerned, we had started revival of Buddhism in Goa somewhere in 1991, where 500 people embraced Buddhism. Later, till 1980, there was no much activities, meaning after the Buddhism actually was vanished almost by Sultan, Bijapur Sultan Adil Shah. He actually destroyed the Chaitya Buddha. Till 1980, there was no Buddhism activities in Goa. So this is the first time in 1991 that we started revival, and everybody will definitely agree that Baba Saheb had a dream of entire country to be Buddhist. So to have entire country as Buddhist, to develop India as a Buddhist country, so we should have a Buddha Vihara in every village. We should have Buddha Vihara in every city, every district, and every state. But unfortunately, I feel very sorry to say, till today, in entire state of Goa, we do not have Buddha Vihara. So we actually established a Sambodhi Trust Goa. I am a founder and a chief coordinator of the Sambodhi Trust Goa, and we have a certain vision. So our mission of this trust is genesis of first Goa Buddha Vihar and Sambodhi Sanskar Kendra at Tuem, that is North Goa. We are trying to develop as an international center for Buddhism, where all sort of training, educational, spiritual, and cultural training will be provided. And the most important, we are trying to accommodate people. There are many people coming from the entire country, different state. They come to Goa as a tourist because Goa is an international tourist destination. People come from across the globe. So we are trying to make arrangement, the accommodation arrangement for people so that we can have a international network, we can have a national network, because presently we do not have any center in Goa where we can communicate with the people. The many people who come to Goa, because we don't have any center, it is not possible to communicate, it is not possible to interact, it is not possible to establish network with these people. So we are trying to build this, trying to build the first Goa Buddha Vihara and training center along with the accommodation, so that we can accommodate at least 80 people at a time at this center. So this is actually around 30 kilometers from the capital city of Panjim, the capital city of Goa, that is Panjim. And this is a Vihar. This is the Vihar. The Goa Buddha Vihar will be of this type. You can see on ground floor, there are two buildings here. One is Vihar and one is Sanskar Kendra Training Center. At the first floor, there will be a library, then office. Second floor, there will be auditorium, conference room, boardroom, 4-5 dormitories where you can accommodate 10 people in one room. On top floor, there are dormitories plus auditorium which can accommodate 500 people. So all the people who are actually conducting different actually programs, it could be the wedding ceremony, it could be birthday celebration, it could be other programs. So we are actually trying to accommodate, we are trying to build everything under one umbrella so that we can have all our programs, the community programs actually under one roof. So this is the project of Goa Buddha Vihar. We are already buying a land because Goa has only 2% of scheduled caste population, and there are out of 2, there are 5 different subcastes, and the Ambedkarite community are very less, and the people in Goa are not much in higher employment. The many people are either C or D class. So first, and another most important thing, as a Goan, we do not have land of our own like in other states. So even the houses that we have in Goa, that actually belongs to a landlord. So whenever we want to do some renovation, we have to take the NOC, no objection certificate. So we have to buy land. So we are buying 31,000 square feet land for this project. So we are collecting money from people in Goa and outside Goa. So slowly we had already started working on this. We have started raising the fund. You can see these are the various places we have already been visiting: Mumbai, Nagpur, Karnataka, Gujarat, Pune, Nashik, Gujarat. So various places we have been meeting people over last 2.5 years. So we are thankful to all the people who have given us support, who are motivating us, who are encouraging us. And a special thanks I would like to give to Rajendra Pal Gautamji, who is the Honorable Cabinet Minister of Government of Delhi. Then Bante Kushal Damasuntaro of Nagpur, Kuldeep Ramtekeji, who is retired as a superintendent engineer, Government of Maharashtra, Ashok Saraswati Bodhi, who is the founder, chief convener of Buddha Vyas Samanaya Samiti, Nagpur, Professor Vinod Bagde, who is the director of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar School of Mission Officer, Nagpur. So we are very thankful to Ambedkar Association of North America. We, the people of Goa and disciples of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and the Buddha, acknowledge our gratitude for all the office bearers and members of Ambedkar Association of North America. You are propagating Buddhism as taught by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in North America, and we feel proud for your dedication. We are happy to know that Ambedkar Association of North America believes in Dr. Ambedkar's dream and vision for uplifting the SC/STs poor in India. It gives proud feel that you all are involved in transforming the lives of poor in India through education. And I know you are helping many people in India, and that really gives us proud feeling. Now, the expected cost of the Goa Buddha Vihar projected is rupees 8 to 9 crores. We are trying our level best to reach out to a minimum 500 Upasak Upasikas who can donate the Dhammadan of rupees 500 during 3 years. So if one Upasika gives rupees 500 for 36 months, we collect 18,000. Let me repeat. If one Upasika gives rupees 500 every month for over 36 months, that is 3 years, we collect 18,000. So if 500 Upasika donate rupees 18,000 during consecutive 3 years, we can raise the required fund of rupees 9 crores, which is the cost of our project. We are trying our level best at the local, that is in Goa, and we are trying to reach out to the people in the different states of India. We have already been actually supported by Buddhist family from Singapore. They have given us 1 lakh Indian rupee on last 14 April 2021. So we are very much thankful to everyone across the globe who are actually supporting, helping us for the journey of Goa Buddha Vihar and Sambodhi Sanskar Kendra. So let me repeat: if 5,000 people gives 500 rupees every month for next 3 years, that becomes 18,000 into 5,000. So we can collect 9 crores rupees, which is a amount required for the first Goa Buddha Vihar and Sambodhi Sanskar Kendra. So these are the details for donations. You can Google Pay on number. This is my number, but actually the money goes to a trust account because the many people, they keep on calling me. I am the chief coordinator. I can answer their queries. So I have given my number, though the number is mine, but the money goes to somebody trust Goa. There's a Razorpay. So directly, actually, you can click on this. The money goes directly to account, and you get self-generated receipt. Here, there is the account number of State Bank of India in Goa. but because we did not have FCRA registration, that is Foreign Currency Regulatory Authority, we cannot accept the foreign currency as on today. And once we get a ATG, that is the Indian income tax registration for the rebate, we will definitely apply to FCRA, and then we can actually accept the foreign currency. But as on today, we cannot accept the foreign currency. So those who are really interested, and I appeal to everyone to support us, and those who are really interested can pay us in the Indian rupee. Then fourth is the scanning QR code. So we have already actually registered with the Google Pay system. So by scanning the code directly, you can donate the money to a Sambodhi Trust account. So I appeal to all Upasak Upasikas to support for the first Goa Buddha Vihar and Sambodhi Sanskar Kendra. And this is very important because I have been working since 2000 for educational, social, and cultural development of students in Goa. I, being the first Buddhist doctor of Goa, when I was felicitated as the first Buddhist doctor, I was not happy. Rather, actually, I felt bad. Why I am the first? Why no doctors could become in Goa before me? So after thinking a lot, I realized there is no education awareness. So I started education awareness. So last 20 years, I have been conducting free social, educational, and uh, medical camps for our people. We do not take actually money from people, but actually we have been contributing for conducting the workshop, and I feel the Buddha Vihara and the Sambodhi Sanskar is the most important need of the hour for a Goan people and our Goan youth, so that they can come at the par with the other state. And being Goa is a small state where we have only 2% of population, we are not able. Rather, it is a big challenge for us to raise the fund of 9 crores. And if everyone listening to me, so through this platform, I would like to appeal each and everyone, each and every Ambedkarite, each and every followers and disciples of Buddha to support for the first Goa Buddha Vihar, which is not only important for India, but this is important internationally because this Vihara will be developed as the international center for Buddhism, and Goa being an international tourist destination, it can really actually will change the life of not only in Goan youth, Goan population, but also India and abroad as well. So I appeal to all Upasak, Upasikas listening to me to support for first Goa Buddha Vihar and Sambodhi Sanskar Kendra. So I thank Ambedkar Association of North America for giving me this opportunity. I thank all the participants and also thank Dr. Shailesh, Madam Vinaya Thamke, Jagdish Bankar sir, Sanjay Bhagat sir, and all the office bearers and members of ENA for giving me this opportunity. And once again, Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya. Thank you for listening me. So this is just a beginning. Our relation, our dialogue, and the work for Dhamma will go forever. Thank you. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandelkar, sir. Your work is really appreciable. And your presentation was really impressive, especially the bullet points you introduced. So it's very easy to understand, like as you are a professor in medical college, so I can see like how nicely you presented and convey your message.